Hello, everybody. This is Craig Shacklett, CEO of URComped, and I'm here for another of our weekly interviews with Dr. David Schwartz, Head Director of the Center for Gaming Research at UNLV. How are you, Dr. Dave?
I'm doing good. How are you, Craig?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to continue our series on sports betting. No one knew it was a series until right now, and I found that there's 2 articles in a row on sports
Yeah,
betting.
that's a series.
That is a series. So tell us about it. What's the high-level overview of this article?
This article is about a talk I had with Jay Cornegay, who you may have heard of. He is the head of the sports book, the Superbook at the Westgate, which is probably one of the best known sports books in the country. Didn't make it in the article, but they are expanding, so you might see a Superbook in a casino near you. And I just talked to him about if you're walking into a sports book for the first time, what shouldn't you do? So mistakes that you might make.
It can definitely be intimidating for somebody that's not familiar with sports betting to just look at this giant board. And it's kind of obvious when you first see it that those are games, right? They'll be like red and yellow, and red and yellow will be like pairs of lines, and you'll see UNLV, USC, but then everything else on there for a total newbie, it's pretty darn intimidating.
Yeah, and there's all the numbers, and it's not really easy to understand. So I just talked to him about what do people do that looks dumb? What kind of mistakes do they make? And I started off by just giving a basic overview of this is what point spread betting is, this is how it works, before going into Jay's advice. And the biggest thing he said, the biggest mistake that the new bettors make is they bet everything based on the last game. They don't really look at the history, which I find interesting, having a PhD in history, teaching history. I thought it was kind of nice to see a field where history is valued. So that was a pretty interesting point right there.
You know, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme.
Yeah.
I think that's a Mark Twain quote. I love that quote.
Yeah.
Or it could be Yogi Berra, right? Every quote is either attributed to Ben Franklin, Winston Churchill, Yogi Berra, or Mark Twain. I feel like that's the tomb of the unknown quote. It just gets assigned to one of those people. Okay, so that is a total newbie thing. Now let's walk through, because I think point spread, especially for people that are new to sports betting, they'll see a number on there and it says the Dolphins minus 7.5. Although the Dolphins are pretty bad, so they'd usually not have the minus next to them. But let's explain what that means.
Okay, so if it's Dolphins minus 7.5, that means if you want to bet on the Dolphins, they have to win by more than 7.5 points, which means 8 points, because you don't have half points in football. And that's why it's usually half numbers, so they don't have a tie. If it's a tie, it's a push, everybody gets their money back, and the casino doesn't want that. They want somebody to win or somebody to lose. So basically, if you bet on the Dolphins at 7.5, that's the points. If they win by 7, you lose. If they lose, you lose. If they tie, you lose. But if they win by 8 or more, you win.
That's right. And then so that's usually to the right of the teams. Let's say it's Dolphins, Bills. There's a Dolphins minus 7.5. And then to the left, you'll see like 206, 207.
Yeah.
And this is another one that a lot of newbie sports bettors might walk up and say like, all right, I'll take the Dolphins. And the sportsbook guy or girl will say Dolphins to win or the money line. All right. And then you have to answer, because actually let's touch on that really quick. So there's the money line, and how does that normally pay?
Money line is it'll give you a dollar amount, and if it's a negative dollar, that's how much more you have to bet to win, 1 unit or $1. And if it's a positive number, that's how much you get if you bet a dollar. And that is also pretty confusing. You usually see that in baseball and hockey. Those are games that usually are lower scoring. You don't see it in football and basketball.
Mm-hmm. So the underdogs tend to have a plus sign next to it. You see a lot in UFC, right? So
yeah. I mean, because obviously there's no. I guess you could do it based on points, but how many fights don't go to the ends? They're a knockout or something. So yeah, that's also for MMA and boxing too.
Right. So if you newbies thinking about jumping in sports betting, you see plus 700. That means you bet $100, and if your bet wins, then you'll win $700 on top of the $100 you wagered. So you'll get $800 back. If it's minus 1,100, which would be a heavy favorite, you have to bet $1,100 just to win $100.
Yeah. Which obviously you can only do if it's a huge favorite, but people do it.
A lock. The Dr. David Schwartz lock of the week.
Yes, our lock of the week.
Yep. And then on the point spread, you'll say, all right, Dolphins going to win by more than 7.5 points. Generally speaking, with a point spread, it's even money. You bet 100 to win.
Well, bet 11 to win 10.
Yes, that's
So
right. Why is that?
Yes, you bet 11. If you win, you get $21. And if the bets are paired, so somebody bet them to win, somebody bet them to lose, you get the $21. There's 22 total dollars because you both bet $11. That extra dollar is what the house keeps. That's how they make their money, and it's about 5%. And the house edge in sports betting is about 5% for the straight up bets.
And what is a term that they use for that edge?
The VIG, the vigorish.
The vigorish. I forgot that is short for something. Kind of like comp is short for complimentary. Vig is short for vigorish.
Vigorish. Cool word. Sounds kind of like licorice.
It does. Now, is vigorish, you're the history buff, is that like a term I can use in any context other than sports betting, or is that just a sports betting thing?
It's mostly sports betting and also loan sharking.
Okay.
So you hear that, the VIG on a loan, you hear that if you go back far enough. And it came out of that same early 20th century, scene.
Got it. Okay. Vigorish. I'm going to stop shortening it. I'm just going to talk about vigorish from now on.
It's a cool word.
It is. What does he say about betting on your favorite teams?
So you can, and he made a really good point that I didn't even think of, because I was thinking, well, usually people betting with emotion, it's bad. He said, when you're overcome by the emotion, that's bad, but you know more about that team than a lot of other people. So if you can bet intelligently, it's good. He also made the point that even betting with emotion, Golden Knights bettors who did that last season in Vegas made a ton of money up until the last
Stanley Cup final
game. But they did really well. So if you bet Vegas Golden Knights all through, you did pretty well.
Sports betting is one of my favorite things where people, if they win, it's because they were so smart, they analyzed everything perfectly. Like, hey, I just knew that this cornerback was due for a big game. Sure enough, he got 2 interceptions. But then if they lose a sports bet, it's, can you believe that blown call? Or can you believe, who would have thought that the linebacker would turn his ankle on that play and miss the second half? I made the right bet. Circumstances determined that it was the wrong bet, ultimately. Yeah, I love that. That's one of my favorite parts about sports betting is hearing the excuses. And believe me, I make my own excuses if I do sports bets, but I love that. It's a favorite of mine. One other kind of random favorite part about sports betting is that a lot of these sharps, and what are sharps actually? Maybe you could explain that.
Sharps are people who are better at sports betting than you.
Right.
I think that's the best definition. Anybody who's better, just like what's an eyeball test for steroids? Well, anybody who's buffer than you are obviously is, juicing up. It's kind of the same thing. I would say anybody who's better at doing it than you are, you can call them a sharp. But it's people who are veteran sports bettors, which there are. And if I can just jump in here, I've got to say, out of all the different kinds of gamblers, sports bettors, I don't want to say they're the smartest, but they definitely are smart in a way that's different from poker players. Where poker players, it's a intelligence very much about kind of more computational, more left brain. A lot of sports bettors are more right brain, maybe really into history, and you can have really good conversations with them. And it's just a ton of information. So it's really interesting talking to sports bettors. Just a ton of information, great recall. And there's, this game back in December of 1987, but it's awesome. It's awesome.
It is fun, and there's a couple different types of sports bettors. One are the type that remember every play of every game, and they just can watch a game and they just get it right. They're sharp, and they can kind of predict what's going to happen. They base their bets on intuition. But then you have sports bettors that are more they've developed a system, and it's all about taking in all these different variables, and they predict, Dolphins should win by 9 points. The house has it set at 7.5 points. I'm going to bet based on that, and they may not even watch the game. They just built some algorithm and they just follow it.
Yeah, I mean, that's two ways to do it. Another thing that Jay Cornegay said that I thought was pretty astute was if anybody ever tells you they make a living from sports betting, they probably don't. Because he said that most of the people who do make a living from sports betting will not tell you that. My little quip was, well, yeah, they're not going to tell the bookmaker they do
Right.
because they'll probably get barred. But yeah, so if somebody tells you how much money they make from sports betting, according to Mr. Cornegay, probably not totally accurate.
Yeah, that is the tough part about making it in that business. Unless you're selling picks, the shelf life can be bad. Because if you are really good, somebody like Mr. Cornegay or any of the other sports books can say, like, you know what, I love you dearly, but we don't want to take your business anymore.
Yeah, which happens a lot, or they might restrict you. I mean, which makes sense from their point of view because it's a risk management thing. They're not, at the end of the day, the companies aren't there kind of for the thrill of the chase, or for like the love of the fight or something like that. They just want to make money. And if they know that you've got a 58% chance of beating them and the house edge is 53%, which I might be getting wrong, they're probably not going to take your money because just statistically it's not going to work out with them. And yeah, in the old days, if it was a matter of pride, they would do it that way, but there's a reason why that's the old days and they've got new ways of doing stuff.
If I ran a all-you-can-eat buffet, and there was just somebody that was just such a machine with eating that like every time they came, they would they would eat the entire like prime rib and all the ham, and then like I'd have to make like 10 trays of food just for them. I'd eventually just cut them off, right? Say, hey, thanks for coming in. I've appreciated your business, but we're losing a lot of money every time you walk in the door, so go to another buffet.
Like a buffet advantage player.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm sure such a thing exists. I would say basic strategy is avoid the carbs like the bread and stuff like that and focus on the filet, focus on that kind of stuff. So I guess there's a basic strategy for buffets, but then there's probably this whole other area of advantage play where you can, I don't know.
Well, there is. You got to look at like the proteins. Definitely that's where you focus to get your most money, and then it's like what's the most premium, dollar per calorie of protein that if you were to buy at the store, that's where you really focus if you want to maximize your value. I was like, and I picture too like a scenario where you bar somebody from the buffet, but then they like put on a costume like a card counter and just like get through security and So if I can ever afford to buy a casino, maybe I'll buy a buffet and run it like a casino.
That gives me a really good story idea. I'd like to find somebody. So if anybody out there is listening or watching and you've been barred from a buffet, I'd love to write a story about that. Fascinating. And of course, get the buffet side of the story and why they barred you. But that, I'm sure it's happened.
It probably. I mean, I bet if you start with those, the hot dog eating contest guys like Joey Chestnut and Kobayashi, they're probably persona non grata at most of these buffets. Actually, that would be an interesting story. We should send one of them with a camera to like the Bacchanal buffet at Caesars and just like see what happens, see how many plates they can go for before.
I mean, they could thrash. If they could do like 70 hot dogs in 10 minutes, they could destroy. I mean, they could absolutely destroy that.
Yeah, they're not going to be a profitable customer.
Yeah.
You know what though? Hey, here's a free marketing idea for Caesars or whoever. Mm-hmm. It's like you bring one of those guys in, just make it like a commercial out of it. Like, just because I guarantee that video would get like 1 million hits on YouTube. Just like watching Joey Chestnut just go to town on a buffet and like see how many plates he could eat.
Or like, can you beat him?
Yeah.
I mean, you pick whatever it is and you can beat him. That would be kind of cool too.
All right, maybe I'm just going to edit this whole part out and save the idea and we'll do it.
These are good ideas though.
Future bets. What are future bets?
Future bets is just basically, is something going to happen in the future? This is another thing that's pretty easy. I think the Eagles are going to repeat. Boom, you place the bet. If they do repeat, you get paid. If they don't, you don't. Very basic concept, very easy concept. I thought that futures and point spread were the easiest ones to grasp if you don't really know sports betting that well.
And I think what the casinos love about future bets is that they just get money and they get to sit on it for months, right? Like,
Yeah.
if I'm betting on the 49ers to win the Super Bowl, I make my bet today, and one, I'm probably going to lose it, but there's always hope. But then two, it's like, even if they do it, even if I win, they pay it out. Like they're just sitting on cash. Maybe it's earning 1% interest or something. Like for months.
Exactly.
It's nice for them.
If you bet like 5 or 10 grand, I mean, that's basically you're giving them an interest-free loan at best.
Yeah.
So it is pretty cool.
Yeah, they could just stick in a CD or something, certificate of deposit for 6 months, and then all right, it's still there. It's ready to be cashed out.
And I wonder what the house edge is for those, because I'm sure a lot of them, if you only bet $2, what are the odds are you're going to be back in Vegas?
Right.
And you're going to cash the ticket. So I think a lot of people do it just for the novelty value.
Yeah, I bet on my alma mater, UC Davis, when they made the March Madness. I think it was 2 years ago. I bet on them to win, not win all of March Madness, win that first game. They did, and then I lost the ticket. Right? It was like because I flew home and during the game or whatever. But yeah, that would be interesting to hear how much like breakage there is. How many tickets just expire after a year and it's just found money for the sports book. Obscure sports. This is another thing that it didn't touch on in the article, but I remember talking to some friends that are into sports betting or people that run sports books that the sharps, one tactic that they have is they'll like, NFL, the market is so good that like you're not going to find much variance or like many places to exploit where there's a bad point spread because it gets fixed really quick. Like they're never going to be way off, right? Maybe a half point, maybe a point. But when it comes to like MAC football or like, what I'm saying, like, or Big 12 women's basketball or these sports that don't have a huge following, some sports bettors will just become like experts in that, and then they'll be able to recognize where the inefficiencies are.
Yeah, and pretty much that's the one power that bettors have in any kind of gambling is you can pick when you bet and how much you bet. Casino or the book is going to control everything else. They're going to control the odds. They're going to control the minimum maximum bet. Basically, all you can control is how much you bet and what you choose to bet on. So people who use that wisely tend to do well.
And with Mr. Cornegay, when you asked him, so does he set the line for all the bets, for some of the bets?
How did into that? Yeah, we didn't get into that at all.
Okay, because that would be interesting too. Because I've heard, there's a heads odds maker, right? All these different sports books have, but I feel like I remember hearing that there's like a consulting firm that basically sets the odds, or they wait for like the overseas books, like the offshore, like illegal sports books, like set the odds, and then they'll work off of that. Like, I'd be interested to hear how they set their odds.
A couple of years ago, I did a story for Seven about William Hill's War Room. I don't know if that's what they call it, but basically it was really cool. Just one Sunday morning, I went down there and was hanging out with the guys as they were getting close to kickoff and then looking at what's going on. It was really cool. It was really interesting. They were really cool guys to hang out with because, again, just like all these stories, it was just so entertaining.
Yeah, I like William Hill. I have their app installed on my phone for when I go to Vegas. I think I still have some bucks in there. And I was just thinking about this today, like with the spread of sports betting and then with mobile betting, URComped just hired 3 more people, so we took everybody out to lunch, which was fun. But there was a Little League World Series game in the background going, and I'm sure you could never legally bet on Little League World Series, but let's say it was pro baseball. Like that's one of the cool things about mobile, like the in-game sports betting, is that I could, make a bet like, will there be a strikeout this inning? That mobile sports betting is going to open up a lot of opportunities, good and bad, I'd say. But yeah, it was funny. Just randomly, I was thinking about that as I'm watching some kid from Panama swing and strike out. What else? Oh, parlays. Tell us what are parlays?
Basically, this is another thing that you probably want to avoid. Good for entertainment, but pretty much this is linking several outcomes together. So it could be games, who's going to win 3 games. It could be game and the over under and maybe an individual player stats. There's lots of different ways you can do it. But basically, these have hold percentages about 4 to 5 times higher than just straight up sport betting one game. So probably not going to work out for you, but you can make a lot of money if you hit your props right. So it's kind of like Keno, where the big jackpots are really alluring to people, but the odds are worse than other games.
Well, like slot machines, right? You could hit the big one, but
Well, it's like the difference between playing a quarter video or a $5 video poker slot and megabucks, where $5 video poker is probably going to have pretty good odds. It's going to have a great pay table. Megabucks, you're probably at 10%, 10 to 12% hold there, but you have the chance to win $1 million or more.
sure. Yeah, so parlays are everything in your parlay card. You bet on 5 different things. All of them have to hit, otherwise it's worth nothing.
Yeah, yeah. So it is really more, there's a ton of luck involved with this because, yeah, you might be able to handicap 1 game or 2 games, but having to have the breaks for all of those games is kind of chancy, which is obviously why these things don't hit all the time. Because if they did, there's no way they could pay people who bet $5, $100,000 every week. So that tells you it has to be pretty rare.
Yep. No, that's interesting. And you referenced one of them in the article, right? It was like $100,000 to one, like some kind of.
Yeah, it was the William Hill, and this is just one of the ones that jumped out at me, was that the William Hill, I'm looking it up here, they have a 15 for 15, and I link to it too. You can bet $5. If you go 15 for 15, you win $100,000.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, odds are you're not going to do it, but it's kind of fun, especially if you hit like the first 5 or 7, then you start thinking.
I gotta imagine. So, I mean, if you blow the first one, that kind of ruins it. But if you hit it, I think that would be pretty exciting.
Yeah, you hit your first few, and then you start thinking about like, how do I hedge? Because I like my odds right now. Anyway, it's fun, man. I'm starting all this sports betting talk's getting me excited for football season. Well, anything we didn't cover that was in the article?
I think we got it all.
Awesome. Well, this was another fun edition of Sports Betting Talk of our weekly interview with Dr. Dave, and I'm looking forward to next week. What do you got? What are you working on?
Oh, I don't even know yet. Maybe if I can track down one of those buffet advantage players, that'll be it.
Yeah, if you know any buffet advantage players, let us know.
Anybody who's been barred from a buffet, I'd love to talk to them because that would be an interesting story.
I've definitely tried. Believe me, I've had buffet moments where I need to get like a wheelie chair just to like scoop my way out. But
yeah.
Anyway, awesome. Thank you, Dr. Dave.
Well, thank you.
All right, we'll talk soon.